Hello everyone, this is Jacob Thomason with RentPost. I want to give you guys a brief demo here of the RentPost software. As you can see here, we're logged into an account. This is a manager's account. So what I'm going to do is going to go over briefly each of the tabs, the main tabs across the main menu bar here, and dive into some of the sections and sort of touch on many of the high-level aspects of the software, just to give you an idea of where things are located and the general idea of how things function within the system. Just for a little bit of layout familiarization here, across the top you have all of the main menu items. These are for all the main sections of the software. At the top right you have sort of what we call the user account menu. From here you'll have your profile, some company details, billing details, settings, things of that nature. You also have a quick access to the support forums. Of course you can log out. And then on the left hand side we have sort of what we call the personal menu with your contacts, your tasks, your document storage, and your messaging. So the first tab that we're on here is the home tab. And this page acts sort of as an audit of all the things that have been happening within your company. And as you can see here on the feed, you can see a work order here has been submitted, a reply has been added. You can of course add your own reply here as needed, and then just submit that in line. That's going to automatically notify the tenants if the tenants submitted that work order, or any colleagues within your company of that specific reply. You can see payments that have been recorded, details of those payments, links to specific units the payments were recorded for. As well, you can see as who this particular payment was recorded by, if this was recorded by you or any other colleagues within your company, as well as a tenant, which a tenant can make a payment from within their own account. So this acts as sort of an audit to keep you up to date with exactly what's been happening within your account for everyone that's involved. On the right hand side here, you can see a to-do list. You can drag and drop, reorder this to-do list. You can just click in here to add some additional details if you need to. On the right here, you can check that off as completed, or you can, of course, add a new to-do as well. When adding a new to-do, you can add a new to-do to yourself or any other colleagues within your company. This particular demo account only has one specific manager added, which is ourselves here. So you only see one person. Otherwise, you would have other companies here. You can just add that to-do, save that. That'll add it to your to-do list. If you added that to a colleague, it would send them an email notification letting them know that to-do has then been assigned to them. They can, of course, log in and mark it as completed, assign to-dos to you, edit it however they best see fit. At the top right here, you'll see this section here, this little banner. This basically is letting you to get set up for online rent collection. So if you fill out these details here and hit send, this is going to send you email instructions that you can follow then to complete the setup process for getting set up for rent collection. If you've already been set up for rent collection, what you'll see here are funds currently in processing. And these are the amount of funds that are currently being deposited into your bank account through the ACH network. At the top here in the center, you'll see sort of what's called the heads-up display. This is sort of letting you know where your company currently stands for a number of key metrics: delinquent tenants, rent outstanding, current work orders and their status, as well as unit occupancy levels. So the next tab we'll go to is the Units and Tenants tab. The Units and Tenants tab has a lot of meat within the software. It's an extremely important page. So across the top here, one thing you'll notice is our filter bar. And so many of our pages within the application feature our filter bar. What this enables you to do is just simply type in any information that you want into this, and it's automatically going to start filtering out the list based on whatever it is you've plugged in. You can throw this a name, email address, phone number, a unit address, unit group, pretty much anything that you have at your disposal, and it's automatically going to filter your units based on that data. And so I started typing in my name here, and you'll notice that it filtered down to a single unit because myself being listed as a tenant within this unit. You can also filter by availability, so you can pull up, of course, the units that are currently available, units that are past due, any renewals, as well as marketing, which is a new feature currently in development. So with this here, we have this specific unit that has been selected. You can see all of the tenants within this unit. If we had the full list view, you can select any of these particular units to see all of the tenants within that unit. Clicking on the tenant's name, virtually anywhere within the software that you see a name that's hyperlinked, you can click that and it'll pull up the profile for that specific tenant. You can see all of the details for the unit that that tenant currently resides in. You can add tenant notes if you need to add tenant notes, as well as a ledger and newsfeed items pertaining to that specific tenant. By selecting this tenant and selecting the tab on the right-hand side, you can see all of the actions that can be performed. So that's anywhere from recording a payment to adjusting charges, credits, modifying lease. You can also print statements. So if we wanted to record a payment for the specific tenant, this particular tenant doesn't have any charges currently on the account, but we could go ahead and add June rent if we would like, and then we can record a payment against that charge. So as you'll notice here, as we started typing in an amount, it'll automatically apply that to the charges on the account. And then we can save that particular payment, and it will then post that up to the tenant's ledger. We'll notify the tenant that we've recorded a payment on their account. If they're set up for an online account themselves, they'll be able to see that that payment's been recorded. A couple other notes here about a tenant. We also have a quick access record payment link. So if you just click the amount that's currently due, it will bring up that tenant so that you can record a charge. Again, this tenant doesn't have any charges on their account. If they did, you would see some charges here and you would be able to apply the payment. Additionally, you can quick access to tenant notes. As well as document storage for that particular tenant. With document storage, you can drag and drop files directly into this area here. Automatically will upload them in line, and you'll be able to see that specific file. This will directly attach any documents uploaded here to this specific tenant. So you'll always be able to see the documents that are just associated with this tenant. Likewise, you can associate documents with units by clicking here. As well, you can associate documents with work orders generally throughout the system, expenses, and various other items. One particular thing of note here with the tenant is you'll notice the statuses that are set up for each of these tenants. This one in particular says pending registration. This one has a setup online access status, as well as this one. Setup online access status means that by clicking this, you can type in the email address or verify the email address if one's already been recorded and set up this tenant for online access. What it will do is send them an email invite with a unique link that they can then follow into their account and associate their own account with this particular tenant record. Pending registration means that the invite has already been sent to the tenant and they've yet to complete the registration. You can click the pending registration and copy the invite link or resend another copy via email to the tenant as a reminder. A couple other things about the unit here of particular interest. The bottom here, you'll notice some specific tags that can be recorded for units. So on the right hand side, if we follow on down, and briefly, I guess a few notes about the items on the right hand side of the screen here. You'll see some unit statistics, basic unit statistics about your units, the tenant stats, and then unit groups. So units can be assigned to a specific unit group, and unit groups are a unique way of grouping your units however you best see fit. Common use cases for this, as you might notice from some of the examples here, may be something like an apartment complex, or it may be just houses that exist within a certain city, or maybe it's just your commercial properties. Really, this is a very flexible way of organizing your groups and however works best for your company's needs. The unit tags down here allow you to add specific properties or features, I should say, for the respective units. So this may be something like a gas range or an elevator, gutters. Maybe you need to do gutter checks in the fall, or something that has parking fees, something you maybe need to mention to prospective tenants as they're looking at some of your properties. So this is a really good way to not only be able to find out specific properties that, say, allow animals, if you have a prospective tenant that's looking, but also just to keep information about what features these specific units might have. As you'll notice, that tag put into the filter bar up here at the top, animals allowed, which is the specific tag that is associated with this unit. To clear that out, you'll just hit the X, and then you'll be able to see all of your units listed in here as well. Like we were saying up here, you can, of course, click past due, see past due units, the ones that are currently delinquent, available units that are currently available, and whatnot. You do have some sort options here, so you can sort this however you best see fit. Currently, the default option here is IntelliSort. So this is going to, using an algorithm, going to intelligently sort the units based on what we believe is the most important unit being at the top. You can, of course, add new units, or you can add a prospect and associate a prospect with a unit as well. The next tab we're going to look at is the Work Orders tab. And so with the work orders can be submitted by yourself by clicking Add Work Order, or tenants. So tenants are able to submit a work order directly from their account. On the right-hand side, you'll have a list of statuses. These are all customizable statuses. So if we go to our settings quickly, and then to work orders, you can see some of the settings that can be set here for work orders and customized. So here's all of the customizable statuses that we have set up. You can add your own status. And some particular details about this, you can set whether or not vendors are allowed to update this to the status, or whether or not this particular status is considered closed. And I'll talk a little bit more about the vendors allowed. The considered closed simply will mean that if a work order is assigned to this particular status, that work order is considered to be closed, and that is to be represented from both the tenant portal and the owner's portal as they see work orders in their status. Additionally, you can add custom form questions. So here's a couple examples of forms questions that have been added here. You can, of course, add a new one by clicking Add New. You can type in the question, and then you can select the input type. These input types will be the type that a tenant or yourself will be required to answer. If you choose required, that's an option. So maybe we want to set up, say, a checkbox. We want to say whether or not, will you be at home, for instance. And then, a tenant would have to check whether or not they're at home. Probably not the best example, but you get the idea. You can choose to show this particular question just to tenants or to yourself as well. So if this is only shown to tenants, then this question will not be shown. It won't be something that has to be filled out by yourself. So if we go back to work orders. So to dive into a work order, similarly to units and tenants, you'll just select that work order by clicking on it. This will bring up all the details of the work order. You can see any custom questions that have been answered at the top. At the top right here, you can see the amount of time since this work order has been submitted and the urgency of that particular work order, the unit address on the left. the details of this respective work order and any photos that have been attached for that specific work order. Comments down here below. You can see the reply that we added earlier in the news feed on the Home tab. And if you need to add an additional reply yourself, you can add one here. You can, of course, attach a photo. This particular work order has been assigned to Bob's Builders. You can change the assignee on a particular work order if you need to. You can send an invite to a respective vendor to let them know that they've been assigned this work order. They can then follow up on that work order. They will receive a unique link in their email saying that they've been assigned this particular work order. They can then click that link. They can add comments. They can update the status of it. And so that's where that particular status thing that I mentioned earlier in settings comes into play. If you can choose which statuses this particular vendor is able to update that work order to. So if you only want a vendor to be able to update a particular work order to, let's say, a work completed but unpaid status, and maybe, let's say, nothing after that you want them to be able to update a work order to, this is the furthest that they could actually progress this particular work order to, is this status. Then from there, you know that any further progressions are progressions that have been made by yourself or any other colleagues within your company. Some information on the right here about the particular actions available to you. You can edit this work order at any time. You can assign this work order to any vendor or colleague within your company. Document storage. So maybe you want to attach any bills or invoices that you've received from a particular vendor or any other important items. You can print this work order out if you need to hand that off to a vendor in-house. Or you can change the status of it to one of these customizable statuses that we looked at. The priority of it, or you can even delete the work order if you just don't want it in your list. On the right, you'll also see the assignees. You can filter this list based on the assignees, and it'll automatically filter down based on that particular assignee. Work order stats, and you can also see some details about units that have submitted the most work orders over the past year. And of course, you have the filter bar, like many of our pages, so that you can directly start filtering your work orders very quickly. So, for instance, we can just start typing in the address of this unit, and it automatically filters it down to this specific work order, and also selected it since there aren't any other results in this list. Next, we're going to look at the accounting. So the accounting has a few different sections. You have your receivables and your receipts. Your receipts are your revenue, your recorded payments for your receivables. You have your payables and your receipts for your payables, your receipts being your expenses, recorded expenses here. Your banking for your bank accounts, undeposited funds is an option I'll talk about here in a bit. Your general ledger accounts, basic journal entry, debit and credit style entries, and property management, which is a specific feature for property management companies to record their management fees, generate their owner statements, and issue their owner distributions. So with the receivables, you have the filter bar up here at the top that hopefully you're familiar with by now. On the right-hand side, you can see some delivery options. You can print or export this to Excel. You have some view options here. You can change it around to fit your taste. And then, of course, we can go in and record a payment for each of these particular receivables. And so if we go in and we say, okay, let's just receive this payment. We have received this $10.50 from Maria. We can just click receive, and that payment has been recorded within the system. If we need to record, let's say, a partial payment, this particular tenant here, Pete, owes $3,063, but let's say we only received a check of $2,000. We can go and put 2,000 in here, it's going to tell us that this is now a partial payment. Instead of saying receive, it tells us it's partial. If we click partial, it's going to go and it's going to automatically try and allocate this out to the charges on the account. We can then just go and we can record and save that particular payment. If we need to modify any of the charges that are showing up on this particular receivable, we can just go ahead and remove those particular charges directly from this page. Likewise, if we need to look at the tenant's ledger or any details about their specific unit, we can do so by clicking their name, which is hyperlinked. So this is all the receivables. This is a very quick and easy way to record any of the payments that you have coming in. If you have a stack of checks at the beginning of the month and you're looking to just fire through them and record payments very quickly, this is probably the best page to come and do so. You can of course do the same thing on the units and tenants page, but this is going to be much quicker. You can just come in here. Let's say you have the check sitting here and just start typing in the name of the tenant. You can click receive. So it's just a very quick and easy way of doing that. The next tab we have here is the receipts, and the receipts are your recorded payments. So you can see here, Maria, the payment that we had just recorded on the receivables page. You can see the details of this. It will show you the charges that have been applied to that payment. And you have some options across the bottom here that can be performed for this particular payment, whether that's adjusting it, marketing as bad. So say a check came and it bounced and you wanted to look that up and mark it as a bad payment. You can go ahead and mark that as a bad payment, automatically assess those charges back to that tenant's account. And notify them that has been done. Also, you can print a receipt for this particular tenant as well. So if we went and we wanted to, let's say a tenant came into the office and they gave us a check or they gave us cash, and we wanted to give them a receipt, we could do so just by recording that payment and coming in and printing a receipt. At the time of payment, when you're actually recording the payment, you also have the option of saving the payment and printing a receipt at the same time, regardless of which page you're on. But if a tenant came in and they just requested a receipt at a later date, or you forgot to print one, you can always come here and print a copy of it as well. And of course, you can remove the payment if you'd like. Removing a payment will assess the charges back to that tenant's account. If you didn't want to have those charges on the account, you could then just remove that that charge from that tenant's ledger. You can see any failed payments that have been recorded as well. So if we had gone through and we had recorded, let's say, this particular payment as a bad payment, it would show up then under the failed tab. Likewise, if a tenant is submitting an ACH payment from their account, you'll be able to see any failed, return payments, insufficient funds payments under the failed tab as well. The filter bar can be very useful here. You have a few other options at your disposal. In addition to date range, you can filter by the payment source, whether or not it's cash payment, check payment, it's a RentPost payment if your tenants have paid online. You can also start filtering down by owner, so you can see respectively how much has been received for a specific owner that you're managing properties for, or any other owners that you've added to your account. The payables being the next tab here. These are the bills that you've received that are to be paid out to specific vendors. And so very similarly to the receivables tab, you can just go through and record these as paid, adding a date, maybe a check or reference number if you have one for that specific expense, and it will record that particular expense. On the left here, you can remove it or you can edit this payable as needed as well. On the right-hand side here, one thing you'll notice is a little plus tab. By clicking this plus tab, you have the ability to add a new payable within the system. And so when adding payables, and we'll go into some other details, a little more fine grain in another video, but you can mark this as unpaid or paid. Marking as unpaid will have it showing up on the payables tab. marking as paid, we'll go ahead and record this as an expense. And one thing you'll notice when toggling unpaid and paid is the requirement to choose the payment account. And so that will mark that as a paid expense, choosing the account that this is being paid out of. You'll choose who to pay it to, the vendor, any notes, a general ledger account to expense this to, or sorry, the general ledger account in which this is expense is recorded, the unit or owner for which this is being expensed, and any description details in the amount, and that will automatically record that particular payable or expense. And across the top, of course, the filter bar and some delivery options. With the receipts for payables, you'll see all of the recorded expenses. And so like we were saying, if you mark this as paid, this is where they will automatically show up. Otherwise, if from the payables tab, if you marked one of those as paid, they would then show up under this particular section. You have some options here. Marking it as unpaid will throw it back under payables. You can record a similar expense. This can be really useful if, say, you have a particular expense that you see month to month. You can go in, you can click record similar. It's going to bring up all the details for this particular expense. If everything is basically the same, you can go in and just change the date recorded on it. And hit save, and it's automatically going to record another expense exactly like this one. You can edit this particular payment if you need to do so, or you can remove it and any expenses that are associated with it. You do have some other filters on this particular page. You do have the owners and vendor filters, but you have a more filters link here where you can filter on down into a particular general ledger account or even a unit group. So, really good way of defining and seeing exactly which expenses fall under specifically what accounts. So the next tab we're going to look at is the undeposited funds tab, and the undeposited funds tab is going to show you all of the payments that have been recorded and have been allocated out to the respective undeposited funds account. As you can see here, we have a large number of undeposited funds payments in this particular account. What you can do is go through each of these as you're reconciling, say, a stack of checks that you've collected at the beginning of the month, and you've gone in, you've recorded all those payments for that day, and then you're going and wanting to generate a deposit slip. So as you're going back through those checks at the end of the day, you can start checking those off as you're putting them into your envelope. It's going to total these items up, and then it's going to allow you to deposit these into whichever bank account you're going to deposit these checks. You can then click deposit. It's going to make that deposit within the system. It's going to automatically generate a deposit slip for those specific payments. You can then pull up that deposit slip and print that deposit slip out as needed and take this to your bank. Cut this off. You have the deposit detail for the specific payments, and then this can then just be scanned in with your checks at your local bank. So this page is really useful for the beginning of the month. You have a stack of checks, you're going in, recording those, and then of course just reconciling them. To set up the undeposited funds account, you would go to your settings. This is not enabled by default, so this would be something you would want to enable. Underneath your accounting, you have the option up here for your receivables to use the undeposited funds as the default deposit account. This means when you're recording a payment, funds are automatically going to be put into that account. So they'll show as pending underneath your accounting and your receipts. You'll see that these payments, if they're under the undeposited funds, will show a little icon here telling you that that particular payment is pending, meaning that it's showing underneath the undeposited funds account. Once it's deposited, it'll no longer show as pending. So general ledger accounts, default, all your general ledger accounts, you can add new ones, of course, customize these however you like. You can edit them, remove them, Basically, make these match your company's general ledger accounts and whatever you best see fit for your company. Journal entries, standard debit and credit style journal entries. As you can see here, payments that have been recorded. Of course, you can filter these as well. And the property management tab is a very important page for property management companies, assisting with the calculation of management fees, the owner statements, and finally owner distributions, sort of a 1, 2, 3-step process. At the top here, you'll see each of the management fee structures that have been set up for this particular account. You can add a new management fee structure by clicking the plus here. And management fee structures can be created in a number of different ways, depending on how you have those set up for your management company. You have a flat fee option, which is just sort of, as you would guess, a standard flat fee charged per unit. You have a percentage. So in this case, you can choose a particular revenue account that you would like to calculate percentages against. You can add multiple revenue accounts if you need to do so, or a flat fee and a percentage. So this one's the most complex. You have a couple different calculation methods for this. It can be a flat fee plus the percentage, or whichever's greater or whichever's lesser. And of course, you'll just give this structure a name that you can remember it by. And then the default statement date here. This particular thing is used for internal purposes, and it's not something that you should worry about too much. The flat fee, so let's say if we are doing, let's say a $50 flat fee per unit, and we want to do with rental revenue, 10% of rental revenue, and maybe we also want to get late fees. We'll do, say, 50% of late fees as our collection. And so then save this fee structure. And then fee structures are then assigned directly to a unit by either editing the unit or when adding a unit. You can choose which fee structure is associated with it. And then, of course, at the beginning of the month, we can choose the date range that's to be used for this particular fee structure. And then we can generate. And let's see if we can't find one here with some information on it. This particular one has already been generated for this statement range here. But we can go and we can do a regenerate all if we like. Just to see how this calculation works. And as you can see, it's going to run that calculation against each of these units for the revenue that's been received over that period, running the calculations, giving you a unit fee total all the way down for all of the units under this specific owner, so this particular owner. And then it's going to give you the owner fee total. And for each of the owners all the way down, for all the units that are associated with this particular management fee structure. If we save those fees, it's automatically going to add the management fee expenses to the account, or the payables rather. You can then mark these as paid, and then it's going to deduct these from the owner statements that are generated as well. So you can go through then and generate the owner statements. This will pull up a full owner statement. It'll let you know all of the revenue and expenses that have been recorded over this period, all the way down to the final cash total. Finally, what you'll get are the owner distribution items at the bottom, and then these items, of course, be marked as paid as well off of the owner's balance. You have some delivery options here for these owner statements. You can have these emailed out to the owner. You can print them off, or you can even just download a PDF copy of it for your records, or to email off as you best see fit. Next up, we have the reports. You have a standard rent roll report. I'm sure many of you will be very familiar with this, letting you know all of your units, all of your tenants, lease periods, current amounts owed, balances, rent amounts paid, things of that nature. You can, of course, filter this list, print it off, export it out, however you need. Owner statements, these are similar to what you would have seen in the accounting for the property management tab. These are dynamic owner statements. These are good for running just one-offs, just to check to see where things currently stand. If you're generating owner statements to be handed out to owners at the end of a specific period, we recommend using the property management sub-tab underneath the accounting and not these particular owner statements. You also have tenant statements. Tenant statements will automatically be generated for all of the tenants within the system that match the filter criteria. The reason being for this, you can just simply click print and it will spool every single one of the statements to your printer all at once, separating them out page by page. This is automatically ticked to be past due, so it's just showing all of the tenants that are currently past due. You can, of course, filter this as needed as well. We have tenant delinquencies, and so this is a really good report for finding out, who owes you money. But also within this particular report, you can click on the balance in order to record a payment for any of these tenants. So it's a very easy way of just staying up on who owes you money and being able to record those payments very quickly. You can also pull up any of these tenants' profiles if you need to record any tenant notes or see their ledger or whatever it may be. So if you're making phone calls or sending out emails to tenants within this report, not only is it just a report, but it's dynamic in nature, meaning you can pull up a lot of additional details for these respective tenants at that point in time. So it makes your life easier when trying to go through collections on any late delinquent tenants. Upcoming renewals will let you know all of the units that are coming up for renewal based on the date that you've set. You can also filter this based on any unit groups if you wanted to find out which particular units are renewing within an apartment complex or whatever it may be, or maybe you want to find all of the ones that are renewing within a specific city or state. You can filter down to that. Of course, you have your exporting options with this, like all reports. And then some work order statistics. You have a completion schedule that'll let you know how your completion schedule's been working, letting you know how your performance has been on knocking out work orders. And then a submission breakdown, which is a breakdown by units over that date range as well. And so that's the reports. A couple additional things of note about reporting within RentPost are that many of the pages that we went over previously, whether that's in the accounting pages or work orders or units and tenants, much of the data that you might typically see in some software systems as a report can be retrieved directly from the pages themselves. And so we like to think of reports as sort of a dynamic in nature, in that you're able to filter your lists and export these particular items out, print them out as needed without having to generate a specific report. So it's much faster and much more dynamic and interactive than a standard plugging in and reporting based system. So that's really important to note that you can get a lot more data out of the system from each of these respective pages. One other thing of note, and then I'll dive into a few of the pages over here, is the universal search. And so the universal search is very useful in that you can basically pull up whatever data you need at any specific point in time. So if we just start typing, let's say my name in here, we'll automatically see what results match for that particular query, being a tenant account under my name, or maybe it's a phone number, or maybe it's an address, or maybe it's an email address. Basically, whatever you have at your disposal, you can just start plugging in here and you can find a match for that. So maybe a tenant's calling you on the phone and you want to plug in their phone number real quick to find out what that tenant count is, or maybe they give you their email address or whatever it may be. You can quickly pull up their tenant account without having to, generate a report and search through a page and filter through all of that garbage. So on the left-hand side here, we have the contacts page. This is going to list all of your contacts within the system. The filter bar that you're familiar with. You'll see all of the different types of contacts here, organized by color and name. So you can filter those based on that type. So if we just wanted to see all of the owners in our system, we can see all of our owner accounts, all of our vendor accounts, or tenant accounts, managers, whatever it may be. Of course, filtering in by name, phone, however you see fit. You can pull up the profile for any of these vendors or contacts. You can see any assigned work orders to a particular vendor, contact notes, the ability to edit or remove that particular vendor. You can add new contacts, of course. So we can add a new owner here. We can add a new vendor. Tenants are added from the Units and Tenants tab. You can add new managers as well. So if we select, manager, it's going to tell us that we need to add that there. It tells us tenants with this. Owners, vendors, and other, which are just any type of contact, can all be added through this form here, which will show up underneath this page. You will see an icon to the right of many of these particular contacts, and this is letting you know the online status for each of these particular contacts and whether or not they're set up for their own portals. So we do have owners portals and tenant portals. This particular one says it's an active online account, so we know that this particular owner has set up their owner's portal and has access to the details that are respective to their particular units being managed. In this tenant here, you can see that this one is pending online registration, so this tenant has received an invite, but they haven't followed through in setting up their tenant portal. So this is a good way to sort of know where everyone currently stands, and you can go through and encourage each of these people to follow through with setting up their respective portal. That will make your life a lot easier in terms of communication, particularly with online payments from tenants and with owners being able to see their units under management, work orders in progress, having access to their owner statements that have been generated, and finances and so on. The next page we have over here on the left is the tasks page. And so you have a standard task scheduler over here on the left. With this, you can add a particular task to yourself or a colleague within your company and schedule these out. You can see any tasks that have been scheduled to yourself or other colleagues within your company with the ability to toggle between yourself and all colleagues here with this icon. The add option here for scheduled events. So this will add a scheduled item to your calendar here. Or adding a to-do as well, like we had seen on the Home tab earlier, the to-do items. And of course, you can see all of your to-dos here with the ability to manipulate those as needed. On the left, again, we have the document storage, and so you can see all of the documents that we currently have within this demo account. With any of these particular documents, we can select them. We can do mass actions like moving them, changing the group for these. We can edit that particular document, change the name of it to something a little bit more user-friendly. We can add it and change the group for it. Of course, mark it as completed. We can trash any of these agreements if we need to. That'll automatically add it to the trash tab. We can then restore that document as needed, of course. And then it will show back up under our live documents. Dragging and dropping documents over here on the right hand side automatically will upload a new one in line with these documents here. We can filter these based on groups, name, relation, whatever it may be. Next up, we have the messages system. with messaging. You can send messages to anyone who has set up an online account, whether that's an owner or a tenant, a colleague within your own company, whatever it may be. To compose a new message, just clicking here. We can choose to send messages to each of the tenants by just looking up their names. A particular unit we can look up, owner, manager, and then of course we can send this as well to all tenants if we need to send out an email blast to all tenants to let them know about something going on with the company. We can see any sent messages or deleted messages as well, by seeing each of these respective folders. Finally, I guess I should mention the support tab. If you ever have any questions about the software, certainly we'd love to hear from you. Within the support section, you can ask questions, you can search our support forums, see some of our other demo videos and tutorial items that'll help you with getting started on your account. We look forward to seeing you around.